Today we're assembling the RitFit BLP01 leg press hack squat combo machine. It ships in 3 separate boxes. Make sure that you have enough room to lay everything out. We're going to take everything out of the boxes first, make sure we have all the parts, and let's get going. Your first step in this installation is going to be one that a lot of people want to skip. You want to take all of the boxes and you want to unpack the parts and lay them out so that you can get to them for 2 reasons. Number 1, you want to go through the owner's manual and make sure you have everything. If you're missing a part, contact RitFit directly. They'll definitely get you taken care of. But the other thing is, if you look at how this box is packed, if you're tempted to just grab the owner's manual and start assembling, you're going to spend more time digging through the boxes to try and find the right part than you are getting the thing together. I've done this enough times in the past to know that every time I get anxious and I try and do it the quick way by not unpacking the boxes, it always takes me twice as long. So step number 1, get everything out of the boxes laid out and ready to go. Once you've got all the parts laid out and you've got your space that you're going to assembly clear, the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get your parts kit, and then this is going to come with some tools. It's going to come with a wrench and it's going to come with a couple of Allen keys. What I always suggest is there's some additional tools that make all of these assemblies go a lot easier. The first one is I use gloves all the time. These things can really be knuckle busters, so having a pair of gloves to protect your hands and your skin will keep you from getting cut and bruised up. Also, a socket wrench is huge for these types of installations. Now, RitFit does a nice job of, most of the bolts are what are called square head bolts, so they'll seat right into the metal, and all you have to do is crank down the nut. Makes it very easy to install. But having something like this will make things go a lot quicker than using the little wrench that comes with it. If you're using just this, it's going to take you a long time and you're going to wish you had something. What you're going to need is you're going to need a 17mm socket, so you don't need a whole set. So if you've got a neighbor or a friend or family member you can borrow one from, if you don't have one, this is going to be invaluable. I also like to have a couple of crescent wrenches on hand for these. This is going to be a lot easier than the small handle on these little tiny wrenches. You can get a lot better purchase on a wrench like this than you can the small one. And then if you really want to go wild, since I do this for a living, I have these T-handled Allen keys, and I like to use these more than I like to use these little tiny ones. This gives you, again, better purchase on it, makes it a whole lot easier. You can get these on Amazon, they're not all expensive. It looks like on this one, you need a 5mm and a 6mm, and that'll make your life go easier. So once you get all your tools together, open up your manual, get to step 1, and as we go through the installation, I'm gonna stop and film any sticking points, any places where the manual is unclear, or anywhere the manual is missing something. In step 2 of the instructions, it's gonna show you to take 2 parts. They look like this. And one of the issues with these instructions is it'll label these parts with different letters. However, there's no letters on the parts. So I just want to kind of quickly go over this. You're going to have one that has the same side, the same orientation flange on each side, and then you're going to have one that has opposite orientation flange on each side. And what the goal is you're just going to take one on one side and slide it underneath, and then you're going to take the other one so that it's on top, so that in the middle there's literally flange on all 4 sides of the central tube, and then on the outsides you've got these so that the bottom portion of the flange is down. In step 3, when you're putting this back post on, one tip, make sure that the longer portion of the V shape is facing towards the actual base of the unit and the shorter face is facing the back. Once you hit step 5, they're going to throw a bunch of stuff at you on one page, and if you just look at the page, everything on there is right, but there's a lot of bolts that cross paths and a lot of overlapping pieces, and knowing the correct order to put everything on is going to be very helpful for you. And the step 5 is putting these side rails on, and what that's going to involve is there's 4 bolts that hold it on here at the foot, along with a foot piece, and then there's 2 bolts that hold it on up here with a little piece on the outside. The way that you want to do this is, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take these feet with these little flanges, the flanges face forward, and you're going to put both of the bolts up through the bottom of that foot. Now, you're not going to put the nuts on it yet, you're just going to leave the bolt, and I would suggest putting these on one at a time. Take the 2 bolts, put it up straight up so that they're sticking out, then take this piece, set it on and seat this bottom portion on those 2 bolts, come up here, put these 2 bolts in, just hand tighten the screws, then you can come back down here, tighten everything down, tighten everything up there, and then put the 2 more bolts through the side. If you try and, for example, screw this foot on first and then put this on, then you're gonna not be able to do it because the nuts are gonna be on the bolts, it's gonna be in the way. So that tends to be the best order to do this step. So again, you put the 2 straight up from the bottom, set this on top of those 2 bolts, bolt it in up here, then come down here and finish the foot, and you'll be ready to go. In step 6, you're going to be putting on the seat support here, and in the picture in step 6, it looks like this is the opposite way it should be. So on this piece, there's this little post that sticks up, and it's flush on one side, and then there's a little indent on the back side here. On the picture on step 6, it actually looks like the indent should be face up, but if you look later on in the manual, you'll see that the flush side should be straight up. And this is going to support the seat, so just make sure you put it on right the first time, otherwise you're going to take a bunch of stuff apart. But when you put this piece on, flush side up, the little step side down. In step 9, you're going to be attaching the weight bars to the carriage itself, and there's 4 bolts, 2 here and 2 here. One tip for you, when you put these in, don't tighten them all the way until you get all 4 in. If you just put 2 in and tighten them all the way down, the other 2 holes aren't going to line up and you're not going to be able to get the bolts in. So put 2 in and then tighten them most of the way, and then you'll have the wiggle room to put the other 2 in and get them in, and then you can snug them all up tight once all 4 bolts are in. But that'll help you get this particular weight bar onto the carriage. In step 3, you're attaching the foot plate with these little screws and the little grommets that go inside here. And what I found was helpful is to have a rubber mallet and tap those grommets in before you put the screw in. Otherwise, if you're trying to get everything through and push them in with your fingers, you're going to have a hard time. But a couple of taps with the rubber mallet, I would assume a hammer would work as well. That really got me going and went in just fine after I did that. Step 14 is another step with a lot going on, and if you don't do things in the right order, which it doesn't tell you what order to do them in the manual, you're going to have a hard time getting this together. So in this step, you're putting these safety rails on, and these safety rails sit in 2 little guide runners, one up top and one in the bottom, and then you install a spring here at the bottom. What you're going to do is you don't want to put these guides on first, or you're not going to be able to get this in. And you don't want to put the bottom one on first, because just the way this whole contraption works, you're not going to be able to get it kind of pushed down enough to go back through the top. When you're putting it together, you'll know what I mean. What you want to do is you put the top one on first, then you take this rod and you slide it all the way up through the top, which gives you space to put the bottom one on. Then you put the spring on and let it fall down. Another trick is you don't want to tighten these all the way until you've got this seated, because the way that the rod has to go through 2 holes on both of these, you're going to have to wiggle it a little bit to make sure that it actually is seated through both holes in both the upper and the lower bracket so that it slides. Once you get them on, you're going to be able to tighten them up from the back, but that's the order you need to put these things on. Put the top one on first, then put the safety in, then put the bottom one on, and then tighten everything down. So hopefully that helps save you a bunch of time, because I tried it, I think, every way but the right way first, and it took me quite a while. So there you go. One last but very important step that's not in the manual. Whenever you're done assembling a machine like this, you want to make sure that you go through and just check the tightness on every bolt and every screw in the entire machine. Especially on a leg press where you're going to have a lot of weight on it, it's really important that everything's tight. And then also, every so often, you're going to want to go back and make sure that everything stays tight. I've noticed that over time, sometimes certain bolts tend to loosen up and you don't want anything coming out, especially mid-press. But once you get that done, hop on your new leg press and get going. That's all I've got for this installation. And until the next video, I'm Tim from GymCrafter.